Welcome to the July 9th regular city council meeting. Roll call, Councilor McDonough is absent and excused. Could we please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, public input. Anybody from the audience wish to address the council? Seeing none, declaration of potential conflicts of interest. Seeing none, item number 5, consent agenda, minutes of the June 25th council meeting.
Move to accept.
Second. I'd like to amend the minutes to add my 8 questions from the March, originally from my March 20th email. The agenda item 10 from the June 25th meeting.
What page would that be on the minutes?
Page 5.
Or was it completely omitted?
No, it's page 5, it's the third bullet.
It's there.
Okay. What do you wish to have added there?
The actual 8 questions.
Okay.
I've emailed those to you.
Yes, but you never mentioned at that meeting the 8 questions. You mentioned 8 questions, but you never specifically said the 8 questions. I wasn't comfortable going back and looking for the 8 questions.
Okay. I've emailed them before.
I understand that, but I wasn't comfortable in giving words beyond the words that you actually used, which were the 8 questions.
Okay.
I'll second that amendment.
So it was moved by who?
I
First
moved
one was her,
originally and she
and I
seconded.
seconded it.
Okay.
No. Joan moved to accept the minutes. She didn't move to accept an amendment.
No.
So is this an amendment? I mean, do we have to move on that?
You're asking to insert information into the minutes when we're there, and so it would be, if Joan's willing to accept that inclusion in the minutes, then she would have to say she accepts the amendment.
No, I'd rather leave my, my motion as it is, except what's here.
I'm going to take a point of order at that one. I believe a counselor has the right to amend the minutes to accurately reflect what took place at a meeting. Then the amendment would be voted on either up or down, and then we move on to Joan's motion to accept the minutes or not. This is like a separate, I don't think amendments need to be.
But you have one motion on the table right now in a second, so you need to address that motion.
I think the question,
I see what you're saying.
the question is not, you wrote this, but I really said this. I think what Jane is referring to is the 8 questions were never
Right.
specifically addressed. They were just referenced as the 8 questions. Is that
Yes.
where you're at? So what does that mean, manager?
I guess, as Councilor Wong is pointing out, if you wanted to amend the minutes, you could make that as a separate motion for discussion and adding those to the minutes.
Okay, so we need to amend the minutes before we accept the minutes. Okay. So you're making a motion to amend the minutes?
Hugh made a motion, and then I seconded it.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussions?
I've heard Councilor Hugh read those questions. at a council meeting before. And I haven't seen them placed in any minutes. And I think it would be nice to have these 8 questions placed in the minutes so that any future reference, we could then reference this document to these 8 questions. So I would be in favor of voting for the amendment.
One suggestion would be that he could read them tonight, and they could get into the minutes next time, so that you would have the actual verbiage of what was said at the meeting.
You did read them once before in the council meeting?
Yep.
They're an attachment.
They were-
Exhibit, they're an exhibit. They were an exhibit at that, when he read them. When he
Okay.
read the minutes, he gave me a memo or an email, and they were an exhibit to those emails. They're, to those minutes, they're attached to it. So they're part of those minutes.
Do we know which ones?
Maybe back in March. I'm not sure exactly who. It was probably Councilor Kirkpatrick.
I'm trying to just find the minutes that
Do you have a folder with my emails to you? Because it would be Exhibit A. Would be an Exhibit A. It would be an attachment.
May 14th council minutes.
It's blatant.
So, yeah.
If that has the questions in it, that was, there they are.
So it's the minutes and points of discussion that you've made are in the May 14th minutes.
As an exhibit.
I attached what you gave us, what you gave me. And Councilor Kirkpatrick, if you want those 8 questions from that exhibit, I have no problem. I just don't like adding words in that people haven't actually used in the meeting.
Sure. No, I'd be fine if the questions from there get amended in.
To have them in the last meeting's minutes?
Correct.
Okay. And of course, they'll be in this meeting's minutes because they're an amendment.
Okay.
So that amendment is going to be in these minutes, and it will be in those to be flagged.
I think that's satisfactory.
We good? So we have an amendment and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Do we have an amendment? You said we had an amendment?
Shouldn't we vote it on the first one first?
We're voting on the minutes from last week.
Right now, you're voting on the amendment of the minutes to include
In,
those specific 8 questions in the actual minutes rather than as an exhibit.
Okay.
and then we'll vote on the minutes. So I guess that passes,
Mhm.
all right?
Yeah.
And a motion on the minutes, all those in favor? Done. Okay. Next item, Airport Advisory Committee appointments. Manager.
We received 7 applications for consideration of appointment to the airport committee. And the council's airport committee reviewed those applications and have forwarded a recommendation to, I guess it would be to the mayor and to the council, that these individuals be appointed to that Citizens Advisory Committee. The committee is supposed to be made up of 2, at least 4 residents and 2 additional people that don't have to be residents. And that's actually how many people we had apply to be on the committee. Mr. Darrell Bouchard and Tom Getz are non-residents, and they requested to be on the committee. And then you have the other individuals, David Barbosa, Mark Jones, Shane McDougall, and Doug Schrum. And the airport, or the council's airport committee didn't discuss terms as far as the length of appointments, but staff would recommend that those terms be set so that they alternate off, and set them at 3, 2, and 1 year appointments for that, just so we can have that process moving forward.
You had 7 applications. It says the committee will have 7 members, so why do we only see 6?
It has, you have 1 standing member of the city council that makes up that 7th seat.
Okay, all right.
Do you need to vote on that?
We need to have a motion and
I make a motion that we accept the list as presented.
A second.
discussion. All those in favor? Done. Item 6B, engineering consulting contract for River Road repairs.
Mayor and council, we've been through a process now of advertising for engineering services, receiving statements of qualifications and interest in doing the design work for the River Road project. We had 4 companies that submitted their information to us, and we had a selection committee that met, made up of staff, and I know that Councilor Terrio met with us quite a bit, reviewing these applications and the information. We narrowed it down to 2, VHB and Dubois and King, to come in and actually make presentations before the committee, just to get to know them a little bit better. Ultimately, the scoring came down it came down even between those 2 firms at the end, which left us really to rely upon what would be the costs of doing the services. And Dubois and King came in with a low bid for that at a cost of $59,482. And so we would recommend at this time to the council that we enter into contracts with Dubois and King for engineering services. To the scope of the work right now would be that they go and they'll do the field investigations and survey work that they need to analyze what's happening there, and also to meet with the stakeholder group that's being put together, and also have some proposals of some concepts of how to fix the road based on the investigation work that they do. The scope of work does not include preliminary design and final design and even construction management of actually building the road. This is just do the investigation and give us the best options to address this. Give us 3 of the best options to address the issue that's out there. And so if we do get to the point where we want to move forward with one of those concepts and we want to continue working with Dubois and King, we would come back and amend the contract or have a new contract put in place to get us the next steps down the road, so to speak, for where we want to go.
Wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to accept the contract from Dubois and King as presented.
A second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
For the council's information, this coming Thursday night at 6 o'clock, we've scheduled a meeting with the property owners directly affected by the River Road, Dubois and King, and several utility companies. So this will be our first stakeholder meeting to get everybody together and begin talking about the issues. We've emailed, hand-delivered, and post-mailed invitations to the directly affected property owners just to make sure we got the word to them. But it is an open meeting, and if there's other people that want to come and be a part of the discussion, they're welcome to do that. It'll be at the EOC training building over the Lions building by the fire station.
Yes.
Once again, on the committee, we have Joan. I think it was Dave. Who's on the committee again?
The selection committee.
Yes.
Joan was invited. We had invited Councilmember Patrick to be involved with that since wears two hats with the CUD and the City Council. We had our public safety officers or department heads, Chief Gahagan, Chief Susi, Dave Willett from Public Works. We also had Penny Thompson, who's our chief building official. She was involved with that, and myself.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Wait, we've accepted this, right? Okay. Item 8, discussion of possible action regarding RSU 39 school resource officer.
Chief Gahagan has this one for you.
Mr. Mayor, other council members. What I'm requesting is a consideration from the council to move forward with an agreement with the RSU to have a school resource officer in our system. They agreed to pay 85% of the cost, and we would pick up 15%. And that's divided out to them having them the majority of the time, and us having them about 8 to 9 weeks in the summer. So we use the figures of a 20-year veteran. So this would be the most that we would require. We would like to first offer it in-house for an SRO, but what we're really doing is hiring another officer to take that person's place. Questions?
What's the officer doing during school vacations? Is he working for you, or is he off, or she?
That it still would be working because of our 12-hour schedule. We may be able to bring him in for daytime shifts, but because of the 12-hour schedules, this basically based on a 40-hour for the school system. So I would think during their vacations he would also be doing administrative work at the school. There is a certified training that the person would have to go to. The RSU is willing to pay that. We would pay for clothing and training and as an officer.
Questions?
Is that officer going to be in a school, physically in the school, or is he going to be?
No, he would be physically in the school. So we haven't worked out the details with the school, so it would be on their schedule. So it may be a couple days at the high school, 3 days at the middle school, or vice versa, back and forth. It'll be their schedule where they would like to have that officer. We also like to have them involved in the selection of the officer.
Anything else? Sounds like a good deal.
Unfortunately, because of the times, just to let you know that all the school shootings that we've had in the United States have all been in a rural area, none in urban, unfortunately.
guys miss Consular McDonough?
Yes. Nobody.
I move that we accept this proposal to hire a school resource officer.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? One. Okay. Discussion and possible action regarding airport hangar leases.
Mayor and council, we provided in your packet some proposed lease agreements. Over the past couple of days and times, I've been able to reach out to the different airport managers around the state, looking at how they handle short-term leases and long-term leases, some of the different rates that they charge for somebody just anchoring down in the runway areas versus being inside the hangars. Is it a single prop plane, a jet engine plane? Is it in a heated hangar versus a cold hangar? There's lots of different options for us to look at with this. And the question, I guess, that I wanted to pose to you is, if we come with a boilerplate template, being able to authorize the city manager or the airport manager to just enter into those lease agreements as that person is able to get those worked out, so long as the template stays the same. But in looking at some of the literature I read even this morning, I don't think these are ready for your approval. And so I'd actually recommend that we table any action on these at this time. And actually, it might be good to let the new Citizens Advisory Committee chew on these a little bit and also get some of their input into it before it comes back to you and the council airport committee members.
Can we have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor? Approved.
Thank you.
Discussion regarding future work sessions.
This is just a matter of the council's requested having a couple of topics for discussion at work sessions, and I wanted to make sure we had a calendaring discussion, I guess, to set those up and when you want to get them done.
Based on the last meeting or so, I'd rather do council business on a council night and do workshop business on another night. There's 6 to 11 is a bit much. So,
I second that.
welcome. So what you're looking for is topics, or?
Well, we have two topics that the council wanted to bring up. One being a work session specifically for the River Road reconstruction, and then the second one on economic development, where we would bring in representatives from CEGC or the big group, the glass half full, and have a much larger roundtable discussion about economic development. And so I just wanted to try to get those on the calendar so we can start advertising out to those that might be interested in coming.
Okay, so we're having a work thing with the River Road on Thursday.
We are.
So maybe we should schedule the economic development and then the River Road, or do you want to do both on the same day? Probably not.
Probably not.
I don't have a problem with, once you know something, like we're gonna get money or this, to have an emergency, call it what you want. I mean, you know, they've been waiting long enough, so. So I'd leave that one open for you to say, hey, we have stuff, let's meet.
Okay.
Any night except Friday night. So that would be, as far as economic development, when would, I mean, people are busy in the summer, but I don't know. I would suggest that you get a consensus from, I mean, there's a lot of groups.
There are.
So try to get a consensus for a date. And is anyone here going away anytime soon? And would you be available on short notice, Monday through Thursday? So that would give you flexibility to get as many people that can make it.
I'll maybe send out a doodle poll to the major players and see what nights are available for them and see what we can come back to, and I'll let you know.
And don't do it on Thursdays on Sweden. So yeah, get as many people that can make it at a given time, and we'll do it then. Is that good?
We'll try maybe for 3 weeks out. That way we can try to clear the July recreation or vacation time period and see what we can do.
And again, if you learn something on the River Road, you can call us in. Okay.
And I
Yes.
we have the school being built. Negotiations took place about the bid being overbid. And they've got it narrowed down, so they're gonna get something started this summer. But some people have asked me some questions that I just do not have the answer to. Would the superintendent be willing to come in at some meeting in the future and tell us where that process, would that be appropriate to do it here? That's just, I mean, for instance, someone that we took the furnishings out, that we're gonna be building a building, and we don't know where the money's gonna come from for the desk and the chalkboards and things like that yet. And I just don't know the answer to any of these questions, and I've never really had it spelled out to me as to.
It sounded from the last thing I read somewhere that they were going to know within a couple of weeks, and they were fully expecting to get that extra 4 point whatever million.
I have no problem then waiting until after
So,
but
yeah.
at some point,
We can ask, but we really have, we don't have any jurisdiction
No.
whatsoever.
That's what I was gonna
It
suggest.
would have to be a courtesy thing.
Yeah. I was gonna suggest just refer them to the superintendent. That's their,
Yeah.
it's their department.
Yeah, it would be a courtesy thing on his part to come and inform the council, I would think, which can be done. But I would think that if people have specific questions that they have a deep desire to answer, have answered soon, that they contact the superintendent's office.
the question was directed to me in the format of, is it possible that the citizens of are going to be asked to put up more money?
I don't see that happening.
Well,
So I guess the update is I know that there was additional money that the state allocated toward the project, but it's state dollars, and there will have to be an election. I believe it's scheduled for September. Jane's got some information on that.
Stealing your thunder.
But basically, the citizens would have to vote to approve the state sending the additional dollars into the project. And those additional dollars would pay for those other items that were taken out.
and would those state dollars require a match from local communities?
No.
These are the things I just, they're just questions that are out there that I just.
They can't send us a bill for more money. I mean, they could maybe come and ask for more money, but no, they're tied to that. But it sounds like they're going to get the extra, so they can buy the new furniture. This is the first I heard that it might not tear down T Park, but, I mean, if they get the extra money, all that stuff is gonna go down. So, and that's gonna come down, well,
They started putting up fencing today around the construction area.
okay.
See, they might not tear down T Park.
That was,
see.
no. That was part of the deal. If they didn't get the extra 4 point, how much is it, 7 or 6? I forget.
It's 4.1.
4.1 million. Yeah. And I said, wow. But they're fully expected to get the money. If they don't, then next month, we'll ask. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 9, 2018 elections.
Just a quick question about the calendar. The airport committee, nobody mentioned anything about when like that first meeting would be. Is that something that?
Okay, who's in charge of that committee?
I hate to put Dennis on the spot.
The way it was set up, the city manager, the airport manager, is only basically a secretarial role, staff support. But I can certainly set up the first meeting and invite everybody, and they'll have to determine who's going to be their chair or vice chair. And whoever the council liaison is going to be to that committee, maybe that's one that they would spearhead.
So this is gonna run more like the rec board and the library board as opposed to the planning board.
Right.
So I guess you guys will, once he sets up the first one, then I guess you guys are on. Now, I suppose the council people that are on the airport committee
Phil's gonna be the
would be
seventh.
attending?
He's gonna be the seventh member.
Okay.
He volunteered to do that. I guess it would be appropriate that he be appointed
'Cause he's
to
the chair.
to do that, or assigned to do that by the mayor.
Okay, so it's done then.
Okay.
I can do that? Wow. Okay, so is that,
Yep, thank you.
all right. Okay, 2018 elections information.
Okay, just wanted to give you an update for November 6th first. And this is my way of getting information out without paying any extra money. Nomination papers are available in the clerk's office beginning July 27th, which is a Friday. And the deadline to return them is 5 p.m. September 7th, which is also a Friday. And the following seats are available. 2 3-year term seats will be available on the City Council. 2 3-year term seats will be available on RSU 39 board, and 1 3-year term will be available on the Jefferson Carey Memorial Hospital Fund. If this seems earlier than usual, it is because it is. A year ago, the legislature passed extending the time frame out to 100 days, and we did not follow that last year because the law had not gone into effect for last year's election. So this is the first year. So it is about 2 or 3 weeks early. So I have also been contacted by RSU 39 last week asking if we were available to run an election on Thursday, September 6th. And that is when I believe they will be voting on that additional funding. I have reserved the multi-purpose rooms up to the gym to run that election. We'll probably run it in the size and scope that we did for the February election in 2017 when they voted on the school initially. All expenses having to do with the September 6th, 2018 election will be billed to the RSU, including my fully burdened, is that the right word? Salary, and for my deputy. So they will pay for all those expenses involved. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10, new business. I have no new business. Do any council members have new business?
I got a couple things. One, Dave, do you know an update on High Street at all? Anything official?
That was not a happy one.
So I don't remember what I had actually told you last time, other than I think that I explained to you guys that the bids had come out, was way over bid. MDOT rejected the bids, plan on putting it out January, February. In the early part, there was some discussion about DOT would probably fund a maintenance mix to put on High Street. Because we're an urban compact zone, the DOT trucks can't work in town. It looks like they want to back out of that. I had a meeting last week with the director over there, Mr. Watson, and he said that in talking with him, he was going to look at other avenues to see if they couldn't fund for our contractor that we have contracted with this year to do the maintenance mix in the town. And I have not heard back yet, so, but keep in mind that was Thursday of last week, so.
So we're still in, that,
Yeah, we'll definitely have the major reconstruction done in 2019.
no, I mean the fix for this year.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you I'm 50-50 on that. What I'd like to ask, once we finally find out, I would like to ask what the wishes of the council is. Do we want to put a little money in there ourselves to put a Band-Aid down through there for a 1-year fix?
So the reason I brought this up, because I kind of heard some rumblings that the probability had gone down on this. So the pieces I'm putting together are that they're reluctant to invest in a temporary fix just to come tear it up a year later.
No, that was not the case. DOT out of Presque felt that the need was there. It was very high. Their estimates at the time was $30,000 to put a Band-Aid. They felt as though it was more than a good decision to put the $30,000 to satisfy Caribou in order to save the $500,000. I don't believe that it's a money thing. I believe it's an issue of them working inside the urban compact zone. So Mr. Watson now is, I don't know what other type of funding that they have, but he explained to me that the funding to do the shim really wasn't the battle to get over. It was to get them to let us do it inside of the urban compact.
Well, tell them they have our permission.
Oh, I even told them we'd haul it for them. I mean, I was willing to go quite a ways, so.
I mean, I just want to throw it out there, just as a point of discussion. I mean, if they give us a temporary fix, do we necessarily care if it takes 2 or 3 years to do the drainage project?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
We do.
because
Okay.
they put
Yeah.
us off so many times.
So
Not to be trusted.
in 2007, we were scheduled for a full-blown deal, center turning lane, pushed out sidewalks, all new everything. I mean, it was huge. The city was having their anniversary, their 150th, and it wouldn't have been until the year after the street was so bad, so the city of Caribou actually funded and did a shim. And I don't remember exactly, but I'll tell you somewhere in the $40,000 range. And that made it, for some reason, that the DOT put the project off, and here we are 9 years later. Now, that $40,000 shim probably lasted 6 years. We've been 9, because the last 3 we've been putting up with it. But I also want everyone to understand, too, that while I was with Mr. Watson, I also expressed some concerns about Bennett Drive. I don't know if anyone's noticed how bad the ruts are getting on Bennett Drive from High Street up to the tennis courts. They're still bad up above that, but that lower section is getting really bad. I also reminded him that in around 2009, 2008, somewhere around there, the DOT actually came in and they did an overlay on Sweden Street, right from the church on the corner of Prospect Street, and they went clear out to the town, to the urban compact line.
Oh, so they were in the urban compact zone then,
Yeah, so,
when it's convenient.
well, what had happened was, the trucks were not DOT trucks that hauled the mix. They were outside contractors. And now with their maintenance mix that they're doing, just like everybody else, they're looking for less inexpensive ways to do things, and they've started hauling their maintenance mix with their own trucks. So that changes things when you ask them to come to High Street, because the DOT trucks cannot work inside the urban compact according to the rules that are set in place for urban compact zones. So Mr. Watts and I have had talks about Sweden Street. I've explained to him too that, Manager Buck was here at the time. He wrote them up a nice little review, and talked about the gateway coming into Caribou, and I don't know. It takes 2 to 4 years to get anything on their plans. So that's why I mentioned Bennett Drive to them and Sweden Street. But if you drive around the county and look at some of the other state roads, you can just see where the priorities lie, and we got a fight on our hands. There's no question about it. So,
Could we get our state senator involved? I mean,
The region's been very receptive. I think
Yeah.
they're very willing to work with us. We recognize it's
yeah.
gone on and on and on. We are in a good spot right now with Dave working very closely with them, and so to throw them under the bus. They have been very responsive lately, and so we definitely want to
well,
work with them.
come September,
I believe we'll have an answer whether they're going to help us or not with the Band-Aid fix for High Street before then. I suspect it won't take too long. I don't think he was ready to buckle down and give me an answer when I was there Thursday, but I figured we'd give him a week and I'll be getting back with him. The other thing too is we entered into an agreement with the MDOT on High Street for a half and half, a 50-50 share on the mill and fill. And just for information purposes, that's been sealed and that's guaranteed for the next year, so that we'll still do the same thing next year. They will do 100% of the drainage and all the basins, and we'll do a 50-50 split on the mill and fill of the road. So,
okay, thank you.
okay, thank you.
That is in writing, you said?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
2019.
Well, it was in place for 2018, and it would have happened this year. But because the DOT was so late in getting the bid package together and getting it out, only one bid came in because all the contractors were busy. And it came in at $500,000 over their estimated budget.
But the cooperation agreement is good for next year.
Yes, our partnership, the part that was sealing us at the 50-50 on the surface treatment, that's all done and we're good for next year.
Feel better?
No, there's a lot of wordsmithing going on here, and I just find High Street to be inexcusable.
Oh, I do too. I mean,
Excusable, and,
yeah.
and yet, be diplomatic. Continue your talks. But it's inexcusable.
And it's been that way for years, Mark.
Doing the same thing
Yeah.
over and over again and expect a different result.
My biggest concern that I had with them about putting the Band-Aid fix was, I explained to them, our past history, Band-Aid fixes become permanents for 7, 8, 10 years. And I said, if you're talking about putting a Band-Aid on so that we don't have to do this next year, we want nothing to do with it. They assured me that they are putting that bid out next year for 2019. It'll either be January or February when it comes out. And I suspect that they will get much different results.
Okay. I find it unacceptable what High Street looks like.
Oh, I do too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Have another matter?
I do. I have some questions based on your email from last Monday from your hospital board meeting. Whereas you're our representative, right, on that board. I just came up with a list of questions based on what you're able to come back with us, to us from that. Was everyone at that meeting on their board?
I don't believe everybody was there.
Who's their clerk? Who takes the notes?
I think Peg does.
Okay. Did they have an agenda?
Yes,
Okay. Public wasn't invited?
it's an open public meeting.
It is, okay. Your email, you mentioned a synopsis of the questions was provided to the board. Were any of these my 8 questions?
Yes,
If so, which of the 8 were discussed?
it was in general terms. They didn't go through them specifically.
Right. Do you remember, was it about public meetings or?
They talked about public meetings, public notices. They talked about agendas. They talked about the confidentiality agreements.
My questions were originally posed in an email on March 20th with a request to have them on the next council agenda at that time. I brought them up in subsequent meetings. How come it took until the meeting on July 2nd to have it on their agenda? Did they not want to put it on there, or?
I think it probably became more of an issue of priority of work and looking at what were the most crucial things for discussion and action. And that's kind of what it came down to. Even at the end of the discussion from last Monday's meeting was when you're dealing with millions of dollar budgets and every month having to look at that, what do you want to spend your time on versus spending time on those.
So a question from the Caribou City Council is not a priority.
As far as preparing a formal written response, that was not a priority for them.
Okay. And you do have a vote on their board.
I do.
Okay. How come you felt like you should abstain from their motion?
From on that particular vote?
Yeah.
For that I, in a sense, while I'm there to basically know what's going on, and I do have a vote, but the motion to not do something that the council has requested, again, that's, I guess from my side, it's just a bad situation for me to be in. I just said, I'm not going to do anything with that.
Now,
They're acting on their own.
If you didn't abstain, how would you have voted?
I abstained.
But if you didn't, how would you have voted?
Okay, that's, move on, please.
When the hospital board moved no formal response to questions be prepared by the hospital, was it a reference just to my 8 questions, or those 8 and any further questions from this council ever until it votes to ask questions in the future?
I believe the intent was that if the council wants a formal response in writing from the hospital, that should be done by a vote of the council. That request for a formal response would come by vote of the council, but they have indicated they're more than willing to continue to meet one-on-one with the council members and answer questions and do all of that.
How many of the board members voted for that?
All of those that were present.
All, okay. During the general board discussion, did the State of Maine Freedom of Access Act enter into the conversation? And if it did, in what context or context did it?
I brought up with the board that as a government body that they're responsible to operate under the Freedom of Information rules and regulations.
So during that discussion, do you feel the board members gained a general understanding of how the state defines a public proceeding?
No, there would need to be additional training provided.
How many of the board members or the executive management have taken that FOA training like we have?
That I couldn't say. I don't know.
Do they have a public access officer, and who is it?
Again, I don't know. I don't believe so.
Okay. So, this I pose a question to those of us that are here. Based on the answers we just heard and the overall reaction we've received from the board, hospital board, which is technically a second-tier subcommittee to this council, taking almost 4 months to answer simple questions, then throwing a Hail Mary stipulation to delay answering further, does it seem we should be asking more questions or none?
I have no problem with the hospital and how they run. And I'm not gonna spend time, I got enough time spent to do here. I think they're doing it right. I don't have any problem with that. I'd like to know what your end game is. What is it you're looking to do? Disband them, sell them? What's the story?
They're a public entity, part of the city, and they don't act in a public manner.
And you have never been to one of their meetings and expressed your concerns to one of them. I'd like to see you do that before you try to put our manager on the spot to do your work. Why don't you attend one of their meetings?
I just wanted my questions answered. They're very simple. Anybody else?
I'm 100% in agreement with the mayor. I'm happy with the hospital. I'm happy with the way it's being handled. I don't see any need to ask questions. I think you have the right, if you want to meet with them. I know they're willing to meet with you. They have said so. And if you want to go as an individual and speak with them and have your questions answered, I don't understand why you don't. But as far as taking up more time over and over again about something that has to do with the hospital, unless you have a reason, a specific reason that bears looking into, I just think that I think it should be left alone.
I'm good.
Any other business? No business? Manager?
If I might just report, in the last council discussion, I mentioned that I'd hoped to have more information on the federal dollars that were available for the River Road, and wanted to just quickly report on that to you. I met with Dave Willett, and I met this afternoon, and we had a conversation with representatives from FEMA as well. Darren Wood from the county was there. There was representatives from the Federal Economic Development Agency and EDA. And they also shared information that they'd gathered from USDA on available additional funds. The indication was that from the Economic Development Administration, they work through NMDC to administer funds, and if there was a nexus between job growth, creation, retention, or private investment, that the fixing of this road would help with some of that, that EDA would have potential grant funds of a 50-50 match potential. We would have to reach out to NMDC, find out what the information requirements would be, and try to work through that if we wanted to pursue those funds. They work, of course, on a federal year, and we would have to be making applications soon so that we could get funding next year, maybe even the year after that, because of the queue that they have for those funds. We plan to reach out to Bob Clark over at NMDC and see if those are even a possibility. The concern is that just from their general description of job retention, creation, there's not a lot of that benefit directly by the road and the impacts that are out there. So we're not optimistic about EDA funds. The USDA, they have funds that are more readily available. That they've indicated that there is a $50,000 grant that we might be able to get from them, and that they also would have a low interest loan program that we might be able to tap into if we need a larger dollar amount. The interest rate that was indicated was 5%, a 30-year loan at 5%. Dave and I talked that we could probably loan against our own reserves and pay back ourselves 3% and just take care of it in-house, probably for better than what those terms might be. They're going to reach out to USDA and try to set up a meeting specifically with them to maybe see if there's something different that they have. But initial responses, initial reflection is that there's really no additional good funding opportunities from the feds that we're going to be able to tap into. We'll continue to try and pursue some of these, at least find out what the options really are. But I think for right now, if we continue moving forward with Dubois and King on the investigation and some of the concept for this year, we can look at in the budget process for next year what we might need to be able to do to.
So we're not getting big bucks from anybody at the bottom line?
USDA could probably give us big bucks, but it would be a
Alone?
It would be a loan.
Well, we have that.
Right.
I mean, we can get a better deal from John. So.
He shook his head there, right?
True. Okay, so I don't see why we can't move forward. I mean, like the minutes or the last thing you sent to the River Road people was, we don't want to jeopardize federal funding by doing something now, but it doesn't look like we're jeopardizing a whole lot.
It doesn't look that way.
Okay, now, is the National Guard a possibility for, I mean, that's what they do. I mean, I don't know what they could do in 2 weeks, but not much probably.
But maybe for next year, though.
No, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
They fixed it once before, the River Road.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I know that's been brought up that they're always looking for training opportunities with their heavy equipment, and we can certainly look at that as an option when we get to the construction phase of things.
Okay. Anything else? Our next regular meeting is when?
August 13th.
August 13th. And what's the September 10th? Oh yeah, that's the one after that. Okay, August 13th, September 10th. Okay, we now have to go into executive session. We have a motion.
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
Well, to discuss real estate and
Oh,
economic
You have to read
development.
a bunch
Oh,
of
yeah,
other things.
that. Move to go into executive session for Title 405.6C, real estate and economic development, and you want just the first one now, or both?
Yes, just the first one.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey.